Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. This is going to be episode 2. We're in section 3. Section 3 is all about shoulders. Last week, we were talking about just the bones and joints. Today is going to be all about the muscles in this region. Next week will be nerves, vasculature. Episode 4, as in the previous sections, is going to be about self treatment and exercise. So stay tuned for those episodes that are coming up. There's a lot to cover here. Trivia question: how many muscles attach to the shoulder blade in some way? I'll answer it at the end. So what we're going to do is start superficially, like the muscles close to the surface, and we're going to work our way deeper. We'll kind of start in the back, swing around to the front, and then we're going to end up in the back again, just to keep it kind of flowing. This may end up being broken into multiple episodes. We'll see how quickly I can get through all of it. I'm trying to keep these episodes between 5 and 10 minutes long, but this one might be a doozy, so bear with me. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to talk about the trapezius muscle first. Everybody knows about the traps. Let's take a look at the back of the model here. We tend to break this into upper, mid, and lower. The reality is it's one muscle. It's a very big diamond-shaped muscle on our back. It attaches up at the base of our skull, comes all the way down to the last thoracic vertebrae, so almost to your lower back, and it comes all the way out to the tips of your shoulders. So it's a big muscle, and it's important that we know how to use it well. We tend to kind of hang on the traps, like let our shoulders fall forward. They get weak over time, and this can be a big reason that we get trigger points in the traps. And this can be responsible for headaches. Take a look. I'm going to put up some graphics of trigger points and pain referral patterns as we go through this. So take a look at the traps. There's one pattern that's referred to as the ram's horn, and you can see that it's the upper left picture in the image here. Very, very typical headache pattern. And trigger points in the traps are usually easy to find. So, you can you can find a knot in that trap, and if it refers that pain, at least you know where that headache's coming from, and potentially you can get it to go away. When we get into episode 4, we'll talk more about how to keep traps active and kind of compensatory things that we fall into. But for the sake of today, let's just keep moving. Deltoids, we're not going to spend a ton of time here. You've got your anterior, your middle, and your posterior deltoid. Big, pretty strong muscle, one of the main movers. All I'll say is that if we're having an issue with our deltoid, it's likely due to dysfunction of something deeper like your rotator cuff. Take a look at the model here. You can kind of see where it lies, where it attaches, and also here's some trigger point pain referral patterns. But again, I'm not going to dig too far into that. I'm going to keep on moving because we got a lot of stuff to cover. Let's spin the rest of the way around to the front here. We'll take a look at the pec major and big, broad chest muscle here. Think bench press, push-ups, that kind of stuff. Couple different areas of attachment here, and then they both come together out onto the upper arm bone, onto the humerus here. And that's, again, one of our main movers of our arm there. Pec can get pretty tight, especially if we're not strong in the muscles in our back that control our shoulder blades. The pain referral pattern in the upper right that's labeled B, you can see you could have some pain referral down into your fingers or your forearms. So let's peel the pec major back though and take a look at the pec minor. We'll dig in a little bit more there. So the pec minor attaches onto part of our shoulder blade that kind of pops through to the front. For that reason, so some muscles can attach onto it. It's not only the pec minor that attaches there, there's a few others. So that pec minor attaches there, and then it's going to come down and attach onto your third, fourth, and fifth rib. Now, the problem with the pec minor, one, it's a deeper layer, but it can, with that forward shoulders posture, it's going to take up that slack and essentially pin our shoulder blade down. So when we reach up overhead, we need to get some tilting back of our shoulder blade. We need some upward rotation of our shoulder blade. And that pec minor is really going to limit both of those motions. So you may still be able to get your arm overhead, but that could be due to hypermobility through the glenohumeral joint, which go back and watch the previous episode. That's the ball and socket part of your shoulder. But we refer to it as the shoulder complex because we've got multiple areas that we need to get movement from. So we'll come back to the pec minor in episode 4 and talk more about some of the movement dysfunctions that come along with that. But take a look at a couple images here. The first one is a pain referral pattern that you could get from tightness to trigger points in the pec minor. And then this other picture shows the other picture here, which I'm just going to touch on this quickly for today because next week is about nerves and vasculature. But just a little preview, you can see how this major artery and some of the nerves have to go underneath that pec minor on the way down our arms. So we can have pain referral from that's just a muscular pain, or we can get tension on nerves and vasculature because of tightness there. So all that's important stuff to realize. All right, let's keep moving on. What do we got next? Another small muscle that kind of hides in this same region. It's called your subclavius. So you can see it right here. It kind of runs underneath our clavicle there. And if you remember back to the previous episode, I compared the clavicle collarbone to a spoke on a wheel, saying we don't need that much movement in here at the SC joint, but we do need some so that we can get much more movement out here distally. That subclavius, looking where it attaches, if it's tight, it's going to be a limiter of how much movement you get at the SC joint. And then take a look at this, the pain referral pattern for that. I mean, all the way down into your hands. So interesting stuff. These types of pain referral patterns, the reason I'm talking about this over and over again, these are the things that are misdiagnosed so frequently as nerve issues. And I'm not, by no means, if you have a trigger point in a muscle, doesn't mean that there's not an underlying nerve component. That's not what I'm saying. But I think it's important to realize that you can have similar symptoms from different sources. Let's take a look at the serratus anterior next. Now, this guy originates from the front side of our shoulder blade. So it's up under there, kind of between your shoulder blade and your ribs. And then it wraps around and it's going to attach on your ribs here. Boxers, ultimate fighters, these guys have very developed serratus anteriors because all they do all day is throw punches, and that muscle pushes your scapula around your rib cage. Very important in scapular stability. Supposedly, this muscle is responsible for preventing winging of the scapula. So you see people who have their shoulder blade kind of pop away from the rib cage if they're loaded through their shoulders. That winging position is suggestive that there's weakness of the serratus anterior. And we'll talk more about that stuff as we get into episode 4. Take a quick look at the pain referral patterns here. And again, this can send pain all the way down into your hand, into that ring and pinky finger. Right? Could be misdiagnosed as an ulnar nerve issue. What else do we need to say about the serratus? Yes, it pushes that shoulder blade forward. It also helps give us upward rotation. So that serratus helps us get that tilting back and that upward rotation of our shoulder blade that we need when we reach overhead. At the end, I'll kind of tie all this together, but again, I'm not going to go too deep into it today. We're going to save that for episode 4. Quick look at just the long head of the biceps as it crosses our glenohumeral joint in a very similar way to the rotator cuff tendons. It's not considered part of the rotator cuff, but you can get a lot of irritation here for similar reasons that you would have cuff irritation, and with rotator cuff weakness, that biceps tendon is going to be asked to carry more load. And we'll talk about the biceps more as we get down into the elbow, wrist, and hand. Another muscle is called your coracobrachialis. I don't expect you guys to remember all this stuff, but this one I want to look at because it also attaches to, and it's called the coracoid, what I was talking about, where the pec minor attaches, that part of the scapula that pops through. It's called the coracoid. This muscle is called the coracobrachialis. And if you've got some pec minor tightness, you're probably going to have some coracobrachialis tightness. And take a quick look at the image here and the pain referral pattern, but we'll keep moving on. What do we got next? Because we're right here, let's go ahead and take a look at the rotator cuff muscles. So rotator cuff, there's four of them. There's kind of three on the back and one on the front. Let's take a look at the supraspinatus first. It's on the top. It's called that. There is this kind of dividing line is referred to as the spine of the scapula, spinatus, supraspinatus. So it names itself. It's above the spine. And the uniqueness of this one is that the tendon of the supraspinatus has to go basically underneath our AC joint. And this area where those tendons run is called the subacromial space. Now, we'll get more into this. I know I'm a broken record. We'll get more into this for episode 4 because we'll talk about kind of the biomechanics of the region. But if you're reaching overhead and you're not getting appropriate scapular movement, this supraspinatus tendon is really going to get punished along with the biceps tendon. Not that, and the infraspinatus tendon, they kind of conjoin. That's why it's referred to as the rotator cuff. They kind of come together and wrap around the head of the humerus. Take a quick look at the pain referral pattern for the supraspinatus, and then we'll swing on down to the infraspinatus and the teres minor. Infraspinatus, you guessed it, is below the spine of the scapula. The teres minor is, the infra is a broader muscle that fills this full space in. The teres minor is a little bit more narrow, as you can see here. But they essentially come and attach on the same place, and these tendons do wrap around to the front of the humerus. So more like right here, it's called the greater tubercle or tuberosity for those of you who are super interested in that kind of stuff. Take a look at the pain referral pattern here for the infraspinatus, and then I will put up the teres minor as well. There it is. Okay, so those are your three external rotators. We do tend to break them into internal and external rotators. Okay, and then your subscapularis is the rotator cuff muscle that's on the front of your shoulder blade. So it's going to come up. It doesn't attach in quite the same place. It's you can see how your biceps tendon is there. The subscap attaches more on the medial side, and the other cuff tendons attach on the more lateral side. Take a look at the pain referral pattern here from the subscap, where it can go. Make mental notes of that if that's something that you felt. Maybe this is where it's coming from. The teres major is not part of the rotator cuff. It's also not just a really good cut of meat from Porter Road Butcher. What I usually think of the teres major being is like a miniature version of the lats. So our lats are huge, and they attach to all this fascia in our lower back. They come up and attach here, kind of beside the pec major. So that's also where the teres major attaches, but it only attaches onto our scapula. And you can see on the model here in the images kind of where it runs. And there's a pain referral pattern for the teres major as well. But again, not part of the rotator cuff. It's internal rotator of your arm, whereas the teres minor is an external rotator. The minor is part of your rotator cuff. What do we got left? So let's spin all the way back around to the back here. We only got 2 left. And I've talked about the levator scapula on several previous posts and videos. Let's take a look at it here. So it's a layer deep to your traps, and it attaches right on that what we call the superior angle of the scapula, and it goes up and attaches to C1, 2, 3, and 4. So putting all this together, if we have, and it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing as with everything else in our body, but if you've got tightness in your levator scapula, you're probably going to have tightness in your pec minor. You may have weakness in your traps, mid, lower fibers, perhaps, and potentially weakness in your serratus anterior as well. So as we get into episode 4, we'll talk about kind of what's necessary to break a dysfunctional pattern, because a lot of things need to be addressed and managed to change the way we move without thinking about it too much. Okay, so that's the levator scapula. Let's take a look at the rhomboids as well. Rhomboids and levator scapula do have the same innervation. The difference is that levator is at a much steeper angle. It goes up into our neck. Rhomboids, and they attach on the shoulder blade a little bit lower. The fibers are almost at the same angle. Rhomboids just aren't quite as steep, and they're going to come over and attach more to the very last cervical vertebrae and really into those thoracic vertebrae. So it'll give you that same action that the levator scapula will give you. And it's not that we don't need downward rotation of our shoulder blades, because we do. Like if you're doing a pull-up, that's the movement that happens. It's just that we really struggle with upward rotation when these muscles are tight, because we don't have good control of them. We don't have good proprioception through our shoulders, or good neural control of the muscles, and the firing pattern gets all jacked up. All right, I think we got it all in, guys. But what is the answer to the trivia question? The answer is 17. There are 17 muscles that either originate or terminate on your scapula. So who cares? Why do I even say this? Because if you go back to the last episode, your shoulder blade is not attached to the rest of your body by any other means than your SC joint, which is about this big. So those 17 muscles need to be in concert with one another so that we can do the stuff that we need to do without beating up our neck or a rotator cuff or whatever it might be. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. This was episode 2 of section 3. Next week is going to be about nerves and vasculature in and around the shoulder complex. Episode 4 will be about self-treatment and exercise for this region. Thank you so much for watching. Please reach out if you got any questions, comments, or concerns, and have a great day, guys.